Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how the globalists have methodically and purposefully gone about destroying, undermining, and making irrelevant all our key cohesive institutions. And you can call it the parliaments, the courts, the Supreme Courts, all the public service institutions, schools, education, everything. They've turned over and undermined and belittled it, and ended up using it almost as they've turned it against us as devices of humiliation for our own society. And that's about all they could do. If they wanted to take over the confident, socially cohesive, well-organised, technologically advanced, nationalistic West, they really had to go down that path. They had to undermine all those institutions and sow as much doubt and uncertainty. And more than anything, they had to make a mockery of the institutions that we held dear. For example, I grew up believing in that politicians represented the people. I grew up believing, on balance, I mean, you'd always find some outliers, but I grew up believing that the media would present a true and accurate factual picture of most of the news. I mean, there were editorial pages where they went crazy, sure, but I believed they would do that, and I trusted and relied upon the news, which even with hindsight was most of the time accurate. Not all the time. There were always outliers. And also there was exceptions, governments that got up to no good, but and then got the media to cover up for them. There were those cozy deals, whereas they would happen, once a year back in the day. Now that's just how things are every day, every minute of every day. So, and even our institute, the Supreme Court of the United States, the current nominee for that is not there to act as an expert jurist interpreting the Constitution. Her role is there to turn the court against us, to make us believe that it no longer has value, that it is irrelevant to us. It has ceased to be something to respect and to look up to and to revere or admire. And once they've achieved that, they've achieved the equivalent of getting rid of the court altogether. So when next time the Democrats come and say, I think we'll pack the court with black lesbians only, people go, who cares? It's already so fucked up that it doesn't really matter. These institutions that I otherwise would fight for have been so undermined and degraded that there's no point anymore. I don't care. Do what the fuck you want with the Supreme Court. I don't give a shit anymore. And this is the outcome that the globalists have been working towards, and they've largely achieved, by the way, or certainly. Now, what drives them insane is after all of their efforts to undermine and destroy and break the cohesion and name call, everyone's a racist, everyone's Hitler, and all that sort of stuff. In spite of all that, people will still vote for a candidate that will stop all that and will vanquish all those people. They will still vote for that political candidate. They still want the court, the Supreme Court, or any court for that matter, to be looked up to and relied upon and believed, and to be a solid, capable, trustworthy institution of our society. We want to look at the media and say that their information they provide is accurate and well considered and apolitical and all that. So we still want those things to be so, and they've been taken away from us, and we want them back again. And that drives the globalists absolutely crazy, because they think we've crushed them. Just one more go and we've totally crushed them. But they still haven't got there yet. And I don't doubt if they still have their way, they will in time. But at the moment, there's still a majority will vote for a politician that will turn all this around and will stop these people from doing more damage to Western society. And that mere thought drives the globalists insane, which means they just double down and they use the organs of government that wants to be, the FBI used to once be looked up to as being a political organisation that would go chase the bad guys. Now it's nothing other than a bunch of political hoods and goons to go and beat up on anyone any political opposition or anyone that's exposing the fraudulent behaviour of the globalists. So now they're just a political they're just political police. I mean, let's call it what it is. And that's very sad that it's come to that. But people don't want that. They want the FBI to be a revered, reliable, trusted institution. It once was, and they want that to come back again. But the go-to playbook, and we can see this, say, with the spread of Islam across the Middle East and North Africa, for example, in the between, say, 650 and 900 AD, sort of around there. They were very successful in spreading across, their soldiers and troops and armies and whatnot, spreading across there. But they were fortunate in as much as the societies they came across were already fairly weak and disjointed, very tribal tribes trying to do battle with each other with more seriousness than they treated these Islamic Arabic armies that were rampaging the length and breadth of the place. So, but what the Islamics did is they just said, okay, every institution you have is no longer valid. We'll humiliate it, we'll mock it, we'll trash it, we'll burn it down, we'll do whatever you do. So there's nothing left. You've got nothing left. You've got no reason to fight us. We can replace those. We can replace those icons with our own. So you might as well join the fold because there's nothing left for you to fight for. And this strategy or tactic was quite successful. So people go, oh, okay, well, yeah, all right, you're right. You've nuked everything we believe. All our gods have been taken out the back and shot, so we might as well just throw in our lot with you. And the Islamic armies added a bit of incentive. If you don't do it, we'll kill you, and all that sort of stuff. So it was the way ahead was fairly straightforward. Now, they did that also with Christians. So Christians in southeastern Europe, in Spain, and the Islamists invaded Spain and had a province there, Andalusia, and they nearly came into France, invaded France. They got defeated in, I think it was the Battle of Tours. But they certainly were successful in that, and that's the go-to playbook. Whether it's these Islamic conquerors or whether it's Genghis Khan or whatever, that's pretty much the playbook. Now, there were differences. The Romans, as an example, they did allow local culture to remain to a point, provided it wasn't directly in opposition to Rome. So, say the Druids in England. They quite ruthlessly tried to eradicate the Druids because the Druids were advocating, to resist Rome at every juncture on every issue and so on. And a lot of this was, part of it was to do, the Druids held a very privileged position in the tribes of Britain at the time. So, the arrival of the Romans undermined their authority, and they were sort of opposing that. But the Romans were a very unified state, and they were easily able to overcome most opposition. There were a few tense moments in their history, but certainly between, say, when they became really a major power, say around 280 BC up through to 400 AD, sort of that era, that time span. It's quite a long time span. They were a very cohesive and unified state for most of the time. There were some civil wars and so on, but they overcame those, and they were able to do battle with states that were very had no unity, had tribes arguing and bickering amongst each other. The reason the Romans were able to very successfully sort of overcome Gaul, like modern day France, effectively, was that most of the tribes were too busy fighting each other than fighting the Romans. When the tribes did eventually decide, oh shit, maybe we should get together to stop the Romans, even then the bickering and the pettiness and the chiefs, little petty chieftains wouldn't accept orders from another chieftain and so on. So even though at the final battle, before Gaul was subdued, the Gauls, the Gallic army outnumbered the Romans 10-1 in one pitched battle, and the Romans still won. So it shows you just how disunified or lacking in unity rather they were. And the same goes in England too, and all over. There was very rarely the sort of unity that could have stopped the Romans on occasion, but there's very rarely that unity. But the Romans were unified, and they had a standing army, and they were technologically advanced. Their organizational structure was very advanced for its time. And they were never able, the Romans were never able to feed themselves, for example. Nearly all their food was imported, the grain in particular from Egypt and around there. And they were able to transport these foods across what at the time were considered vast distances, and were able to build port infrastructure and loading and warehousing and storage facilities that were very advanced for their time. And so Rome was never independently rich. It was just technologically advanced and very well organized, and of course the standing army. But they were tolerant, far more tolerant, say, the Islamists were of local culture and local customs and habits, gods, and those sorts of things. Now, I guess when you're looking at taking over another people, you can have direct control, or you can use the local gentry or the local aristocrats, and just make sure they do what you want, but you don't fiddle too much in the internal affairs. Now, there are things that really turn the hair of, say, Christians. For example, and when I went to India, if a husband died, when they burned the husband, they would burn the wife alive along with the dead husband. Not a very pleasant thing, and the British put a stop to that, which outraged some of the local religious leaders, for example. But the British thought that was just too barbaric for words, so they stopped that. But generally, they were quite accepting of many of the Indian customs and habits and ways of life and so on. What we're looking at here there's a few sort of instances throughout history that the Islamic folks were one, but even they had some tolerance of others. But when you look at ideological change, which is, say, the communist revolution, and we can look at the Soviet Union, the Bolshevik Revolution, we can look at Pol Pot in Cambodia, Mao Zedong in China, the list goes on. And when it's ideological, then the ideological view is that no opposition, none can be tolerated, absolutely none. You're not even allowed to think differently. And that's what we're in the middle of now in the West. It's an ideological revolution that's being imposed on us, forced on us, and they've gone along and taken over all our institutions. Now, you would say that white people in the West are being quite oppressed at the moment. There are job quotas and race and gender quotas and so on, and all business and education, government, everywhere, access to government housing and government services, facilities, very much based on race and gender. So you're a straight white male, you're screwed. You got a real problem. So clearly, I mean, it's not even a debate. White people have been clearly oppressed in their own countries. Now, the way that they ideologically they argue out their way out of this is to say, well, white people have social power, ideologically determined, of course. What social power? Well, the president's white. Well, what the fuck's that got to do with anything? What, is everyone the president of the United States? Is every single person the president? Of course not. So white people are clearly oppressed in their own countries, and the ideological view that is being pushed about is that if you have social power, and all white people are presumed to have it, then you cannot be oppressed. Just ideologically, it can't happen. Just can't happen. The bum on Skid Row who hasn't got a nickel to his name, he's not oppressed. He's white. So, and then they'll use relative oppression. So, well, okay, well, let's say the white guy without a nickel to his name on Skid Row is oppressed. If there was a black guy on Skid Row also without a nickel to his name, then he'd be more oppressed. So the white guy is less oppressed because the black guy is more oppressed, which means the white guy is not oppressed. Get it? So this is, of course, utterly absurd, but that's the ideological thing. And it's being put about all over the place. So all white institutions are institutions of oppression, courts of law, all this sort of stuff. And so this means that because they're oppressive institutions, this means they can all be destroyed and undermined and, more importantly, turned against us. So what would previously have been a museum to show off the achievements of or demonstrate the achievements of the white civilization, in a white country, for goodness sake, that's now being turned around so that those achievements are now cast in a negative light to say, well, they're acts of oppression against other people. And then they'll have claims that, black lesbians invented everything that we use today and this sort of thing. So very little of it, if any, is true or even half true or a quarter true. But it's the sort of thing they're doing to turn all our institutions against us. Now, by doing that, they undermine our confidence, they undermine our sense of self, our self-belief, our ability to resist, our ability to go, no, that's bullshit. Because they're turning, again, like the Supreme Court of the United States, they want to turn it into some fucking theatre, some bullshit theatre, as they have done for, say, the Senate and the House of Representatives in the United States, or even the parliaments in Britain and around the world, the Western parliaments around the world. They're stacked with very, very ordinary people. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Presley, Ilhan Omar, and all these sort of people. I mean, they couldn't get a job in Walmart, and here they are running around as lawmakers in one of the most prestigious parliaments in the world. This is how they undermine it, turn into a laughing stock. So in the end, you think the parliament's nothing. It's stacked with idiots. And once you say that, then you don't care about the vote. Then you don't care about democracy. Then you don't care about representative democracy, and then it's all gone because they've turned it into mush, into uselessness, and then they've got control of you. And this is what we have to fight back against. We must not allow them to do this. And so, if you can vote for any politician that says, "I'm going to do something about this, and I'm going to send those bums packing," then you vote for them, but don't vote for the people that are destroying your society and your culture. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.